for this. Okay. So whoever would like to start, just like to speak to, and I'm not even going to do timing because I think everybody kind of has their own timing already internalized, I hope.
Okay.
Okay. Celia?
I would like to start. Did you want to re-mention again the beginning because of the recording, or?
Oh, I just,
No.
that's okay.
Okay, okay, good. I would like to talk to Bill.
Hey, I'm listening.
Okay, great. Why I wanted to go first, because of the quote that he spoke, and straight away diving into it takes two to speak the truth. And that is something that I try to delete in my training straight away, that I say everybody has their own truth and each truth can be spoken. So it's not about the truth. It's about what you have in yourself as your truth. And I don't even need to understand your truth. I don't even need to hear what is behind that truth. I just need to catch you in this moment where you want to speak out that truth. So that's so I changed actually the truth. If I could replace it with a thought, it takes two to speak a thought. And yeah, one to speak it and the other to hear it or to listen to it. Hearing, I think, is meant here also understanding, and that is another part that I think, oh, could be just be heard.
Okay. Whoa, you started with an easy one. So you were reacting to the Thoreau quote about it takes two to speak the truth, one to speak it, one to hear it. And you had a feeling that you didn't like the word "the truth," as in there's one doctrine, sort of the truth. And in your training, your experience is that I'm listening to your thought at the present moment. And it might be your truth. I may accept it, I may not, but I'm just here to listen to whatever your truth is. I'm going. Yeah. What I'm feeling is that you're saying to the person, I'm going to go where you are non-judgmentally. Is that?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And so you thought that you would better change it from truth to thought.
Yes. Then I could really adapt that or use it. Yeah.
And then on the speaking model, you also had something, because essentially you wanted to deepen the idea of hearing to a deeper understanding.
Well, for me, the understanding has to do with that I understand that you want to express yourself. I do not need to understand your motives or behind, or I don't need to understand it. You need to be the one who leads me as far as you want to express yourself. So that's another thing, but that goes later with what meaning means, and that is for the next round, I think.
Okay, all right. Okay. So I wouldn't try to repeat exactly what you just said. But I would just say that there's a little bit more. But again, you reinforce the idea that you're really committed to going wherever that speaker is,
right? And
then accepting them as they are.
Right. Correct. Yes. And that goes through everything, whether it is truth, meaning, and what's behind it. It's of non-importance, actually. Of what is of importance is what you have here now. What is your emotional baggage that you want to give some relief to? And if you can get more insight of what you are saying, then that's even better.
Okay. So ban the labels. Right on with empathy.
Right on. Thank you. Yes, I feel totally heard.
Okay. Peter.
All right, I'm here.
Okay. So is this about chapter 9? Okay. Thank you. So diving deeper, I was brought back to Susan's compassionate listening training. And I found that for diving deeper for me, since sometimes I can be a very concrete fellow, the idea of listening to facts, feelings, and values was very helpful to me. And that helped me kind of dive deeper. It doesn't mean that with each person in each situation, you have to do all of that, as it may not be appropriate. But, that's when diving deeper, I felt that was a good model for me. Am I doing that? If I did do that, why didn't I do that? So I find so diving deeper and Susan's Partnow's idea of facts, feelings, values, sort of mesh to me. It's not a perfect fit. I don't know.
So what I heard is that you're feeling a bit empowered by the ability to choose between using this model of the facts, the feelings, and the values or not, and choosing what works in which situation for you. And that it really helps you get deeper into understanding people and appreciating what they're communicating to you.
Yeah, I don't see it necessarily in opposition. I see them as being sort of, parallel. He takes like a baby step there, I think, in that. He's taken a baby step. And then chapter 10, he goes on to like affirming or things like that. And I think those are important. And I think that, so those two chapters, 9 and 10, to me, correspond to Susan's 3 levels. So I find there's a coherence there.
Yeah, so you're liking that all these tools are kind of meshing together and creating just a better skill set for you.
Right. And then looking forward to finding and deepening my understanding, because that's just my understanding this time.
So you're just enjoying the fact that you're getting more and more skills and that you're able to just keep evolving what you're doing.
Great. Thank you, Peter. I feel very heard. Thank you.
For me, I actually like the part about how.
Who are you speaking to?
Oh, Edwin, you're left. So
okay.
Yeah. I like the part where getting deeper is more risky. That he speaks to the fact that there's an actual risk in becoming more specific in the way you need to in order to get deep enough to really hear what someone's saying. Particularly because the style of empathy I like, I like to take those risks, and I really don't see myself as someone who's always that accurate all the time. I like to become accurate by the person correcting me. And really like getting specific, them owning what they're saying to the point where they trust me enough just to get out and say it. Like, they jump through all those barriers to say exactly what they want to be saying.
So this is this is what you like to get to, the riskiness of saying something sort of more deeply, but then it's up to the person to say what it is that they mean. It's like if you're not saying what they're really saying exactly, that you really want them to, say it the way that they mean. And that there's sort of an element of you could be wrong, and there's a bit of vulnerability or risk in being wrong in your guess, but you want the other person to take the responsibility to, say it the way you mean it.
It's almost... It's a silly analogy, but it's almost like if you want to make sure you have someone's phone number written right, you ask them, but then you switch one of the numbers at the end, and then they say, no, it's this, just to make sure that you have it. And I guess it's a skill that I really appreciate, because I've realized that my empathy guesses just tend to hit wrong. I even if I pay really good attention, but I have I really enjoy my own sense of presence that I'm just going to stay there until it happens. I'd rather develop a rapport with someone rather than be right. because they'll spontaneously give me all I need, or all they need rather in the discussion. So I'm okay with being wrong, very, very wrong, as long as there's a connective factor in it.
So you're like fine with, hey, you're actually feeling that your guesses or your reflections are wrong quite a bit, but you're fine with that as long as there's a sense of a connection being created. So you're kind of going for that sense of connection.
Yeah. Now in saying, I feel a little guilty that shame and guilt and like, oh man, I'm wrong a lot. But at the same time, I'm just owning it for what it is. And even with that, I develop, the methodology or the skill set kind of compensates almost. Like I'm okay with throwing ideas out there wildly, if there's some nuance or connection, I'm okay with the wildest ideas, because the truth is that sometimes it just has to be said. Sometimes the wildest ideas are, the ones that create that connection or create that sense of, someone's really trying to understand me.
Mm-hmm. So at first, when you hear that reflected back to you, you feel a little guilt or even shame about that approach. But then you kind of look at it and say, well, you actually value that approach because you're getting the wildest, craziest ideas out there, and it gives you something, sort of a creative jump. You can creatively jump off of that or kind of stimulate some real connection through that.
Well, yeah, for example, like when I'm working with someone and I know for a fact that there is something going on that they just can't say, particularly when I work with the clientele I focus on as a social worker. There's a lot of times people are hearing or seeing things that they don't quite know how to say, I'm hearing or seeing this. And just owning like, oh, so it's like everything's okay. And like saying that guess, like, hey, everything's just perfectly hunky-dory. And sometimes, like, I know it's not, I can tell. But sometimes people go, well, not quite okay, and then they start opening up more, and just appreciating that a lot of times it's just the fact that I've known that person for 5 years. That, in the end they'll say, not everything's perfect, but let me tell you what it is. For example, I had a client recently who said, you know what, you hear what I'm saying, but you're not listening. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, my bad. I goofed. What do you want to tell me? Tell me right to my face. And she did, and it was good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can see you see someone, and they're not able to really express themselves on what it is that they're trying to get out, and you can see that they're struggling with that. So when your approach has been just have some kind of off the cuff, bit wilder sort of a response to them. And that kind of jars things enough where they can kind of tap into that feeling that they haven't been able to express just because you're so kind of off the cuff in a sense. And
yes. And I just don't want it to seem like I just do it randomly. It's there and I use it and then I don't use it. Sometimes I'm much more focused.
So you're kind of like focused. It's not like you just do it with everybody. It's kind of, there's a real intention, a focused time when you use it, kind of for specific times to kind of keep it sounds like to support the person in opening up. If you see that they need support in opening up, you're going to contribute to them by doing this to help them to kind of open up, to share something that they might normally not be able to.
Yeah. And right now I'm just thinking about the nuance of that. So I feel complete. I feel heard. Thank you very much. So
getting a reflection on this is you're kind of like wondering about the nuances of it. It's kind of making you think about your strategy sort of or approach. And you feel heard. Okay. Then I'll speak to Celia. Okay, so yeah, with this chapter, I appreciate the getting into the more of the nuances of the listening. So there's kind of this listening approach, and we're kind of getting into you know, more the nuances and kind of moving into the different approaches, and it can be a real learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so that you actually really like it, that we now dive a little deeper, and you made the movement, and I saw those balls in front of you that you just mentioned before, like gets more clear and more of the shiny elements are visible and you can use.
Yeah, it's like there's a thought and a dynamics, and it's kind of like far away from me. You know, it's there, it's this dynamic, and now we're kind of getting closer to it. You know, we're kind of getting into the essence of it, kind of.
Right.
So, so it's interesting. It's a kind of a growing space to get it more deeply into it.
Yeah, on one hand, you would say you were far away and now you come closer, but now that you dive in, it actually is more space and opens up more possibilities.
Yeah, and so the closer we get into it, the more we can kind of learn and, you know, get into those nuances, and trying to get a sense of how he's, you know, it's kind of almost need to read the chapter again just to get a, you know, a clearer understanding of what his point is. You know, what is, it's not really, no real super insight is coming to me. Like, what is he really getting at? What's underneath all the stuff he's saying?
Right, like when you read it the first time, you may not even get what's really laying underneath, but when you dive deeper in how he means the things or what he's actually saying, maybe you want to read it one more time to see what he actually is saying.
But it's helpful to hear everyone else's, like getting into these nuances. It's helpful, like to see Peter kind of struggle with like his strategies getting deeper. It's very insightful, you know. It's like, oh, okay, I know what I thought when Peter was saying that. The thought came up of Carl Rogers. He said, he in his later years, he was saying, I do stuff that has no rational connection to anything, but it seems like the right thing to do. And I know that sense that you say something, you don't know where the hell it comes from. It's some weird, energetic thing. It doesn't make sense with anything, and it can be totally sort of like crazy, like where in the hell does this come from? But it's the thing that kind of opens the door for some kind of... For some kind of an energy. We're talking about energy. There's a shift in the relational energy that kind of happens, and it comes out of this, you know, you kind of have an inkling of it at the corner of your perceptions, and then, you know, usually you don't trust yourself to go with it because it doesn't fit with anything else. But when you go with it, it totally kind of opens these, you know, these doors.
Yeah, so what you really liked and what triggered you when Peter said something is that all of a sudden you realize it's more than just words. It's like an energy kind of thing. And you can even tap into it, or it happens to you and you can use it, and things become clear on a different level. And that is really very enjoyable.
Yeah, because it's scary to go into pure energies. It's like the constriction, social controls, kind of, you know, that kind of hold things, kind of feel sort of safe. You kind of let go of that, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going with these energies. I don't know where they're going to go and what's going to come up.
Right, or how it's going to end to an end.
How it's going to end. How are people going to see me, you know, whatever. And so I guess that's more like the improv acting, right? That improv has that quality to it of, you don't know where it's going. It's in the moment. And but it's like it releases energy. Yeah.
Right. Just let it go like an improv, and then you don't need to know where it is going. It just let it go.
Yeah, exactly. And how to have the trust, you know, because I feel anxiety in myself to let go like that, you know, so
could you trust that it brings you somewhere without being harmed or being ashamed or being
be seen as a fool or something.
Fool, yeah.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thanks. That
Okay, thank you. Peter, would you want to listen to me?
Of course.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah. Diving deeper. That is for me also very, very yummy. I try to help a person to dive deeper themselves, and I mention to my students always go for harvesting a yes. And even though I heard you saying I can get a big no, I mean this or that, and then it's also opening up. So sometimes they may say no, but underneath it is go, yes, ask me more. So that hunger is, you tap into it, and that is great, I think.
So can I reflect back?
Yes.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that you're really appreciating this skill or this nuance of how a no could even be a yes, and teaching that skill to your students in a way that really invigorates their ability to connect with people. Yes,
that's it. And the help I give my students is think of synonyms, not per se think of the meaning underneath, but think what do you hear in where a person puts an emphasis, put the emphasis there. What do you hear? Can you regroup the words they say? And if someone says, I don't want to go there, so you say you don't want to go there, or you don't want to go there, or you don't want to go there. So you take that emphasis, and I think he speaks later about that in music. So that one, but regrouping the words can also give that exactly, or yeah, that's what I mean.
So another way that you see things going deeper is that nuance of putting the emphasis or regrouping words, or taking their main concept, but just shifting it a little bit so that people can see the reality of what they're expressing.
Yes, and what they are really after. So what they are hinting to, what they move me to. Yeah. Yeah, because they also could say, well, no, I mean actually, and then adjust my help. Yeah.
So you see it's such a connective force that once you get that going, that even if you do the mistake, it's like no, not here, but I'll just give it to you, kind of like, just take it.
Right. Yeah. It's more like yeah. Thank you, Peter. I feel totally heard.
All right. Thank you. Bill, could you hear me? I can't hear you. Sorry. All right. I think you're frozen. Okay, now you're back.
Okay.
Now I'm, again, this happens every once in a while. I realize that I have this big judgment of myself that I'm not a good listener, or that I'm in the moment with something very significant, and like the anxiety of it like eats me up. And I have to remind myself to just be there, literally just being there, and not like, there's just something about being there. Who is it? Someone says, 90% of success is just showing up, and it's tough. I get caught a little bit saying like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as I want to be. And the truth is that I'm just even thinking now, like just showing up, just physically or emotionally, or both physically and emotionally being there is all that's needed.
Okay. So, you're struggling with some self-judgments you have about that. You said that I'm not a good listener. And as you're kind of reviewing it, you're seeing that the judgment is based on, and not good, it's not based on anything that's really real, because the important part is showing up and being there and being present. And if you're doing that, then you are being a good listener. You're being open, you're being vulnerable, you're willing to, more likely than, even if it's a negative judgment about yourself, that can also be rigid and interfere with your listening to somebody else. And so you're exploring the ways, I hear, to basically be present without judgment, self-judgment.
And I'm just realizing that maybe at the point that I'm at, Edwin reminded me of the idea of those energies. And that's really the point I'm at now, that, it's not that I don't care about listening, but I really want to hear that intent or that energy that not only like one step behind what the person's saying, but it's like 10 steps behind, or, it's a further distance in. And I want to hear that rather than what they're literally saying. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with just kind of being present to that intent of wanting to create that skill and just being there for it.
So you're interested in really diving very deep with people and really getting to the core of what they're talking about, not just the content, but the deeper meanings and the deeper issues that exist there. Yeah.
And it's funny because it's something I never thought I'd admit, but at least in my field, when you talk to really experienced people, like you talk to a social worker who's been in private practice for 40 years, and some of them tell you, like, someone shows up and I can already tell exactly where everything's going. And I always thought that was BS. Like, I thought, oh no, everyone's an individual, wonderful snowflake, but it's a skill. There is an ability to kind of, it's not like telling the future, but kind of saying like, oh, I've seen this movie before and it's happening and I'm okay with that and just being present for it. And that's okay. It's okay to develop that skill and to appreciate it.
Okay. So you're also contrasting with this with a sense of newness and kind of like a beginner's mind, with the sense of, the value of experiences, to quickly assess a situation and to allocate resources, to triage, prioritize what might, be the important or unimportant things. So you're kind of existing in both these worlds, and appreciating both.
I wouldn't say it's beginner or not beginner. I'm just I'm sitting with the power of being present versus the power of knowing what's happening, like seeing that intent, regardless of whether I am present or not. That kind of sounds kind of like really strange saying that, but like I like both.
Right. So as I understand it. So you want to have an open mind so that you can be flexible and also to hear. And at the same time, you have appreciation of the vast experiences and things like that also are brought to it, to a situation. And you're feeling that both have, can be contributed, and depending upon the situation, one more than the other.
Yeah. All right. I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Edwin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I guess I'm going to rag a little bit on Carl Rogers here. And because when I've been discussing it, they said, oh, you should watch Carl Rogers, a friend of mine who teaches psychology, and I respect very dearly. And so I went on and I listened to him, and it was, I didn't listen, there were like 3 segments of 20 minutes, and I listened to about 2 of them. And I saw him, and obviously he knew exactly what he was doing. He was a master of, but it was a woman who was talking about, she had been divorced, and she's talking about her sexuality and wanting to express that, but then also what should she share with her daughter or not. And what I felt that was lacking is like he was being objective, but I didn't really feel compassion. I'm not saying that he didn't have it, but he was very, very dry and cold. And more in my own experience, and is that what we call objectivity, and this is for interesting to consider for a culture of empathy, what we call objectivity can sometimes be very cruel, and that compassion is actually more objective to me than objectivity. And so that's why I like when at the empathy tent, you give people a glass of water, a cookie, an empathy kiss, just to show them, hey, I like water too. I like chocolate, whatever it is. That there's a connection, and I'm on your side. And I don't think that that's wrong. You don't want to be judgmental, but you do want to make the feeling of that connection. And in that video, I really didn't see Rogers make that.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of rag a little bit on Carl Rogers here. You saw the Gloria tapes, and where she's talking about her relationships, her sexual wanting relationships, and the experience of that. And from what you were hearing, he seemed kind of cold, and you're associating that with objectivity. That there's an objectivity at distance that feels sort of cold, and what you're sort of yearning for, desiring, is a sense of warmth, a sense of connection. And that sense of connection is what you try to create at the empathy tent, is, just give someone some water, kind of offer them something, offer them a hug, just these different things that actually create more of a feeling of connection and warmth, which is what you'd like to, and you're calling that warmth compassion too.
Thanks, I feel heard.
Okay. Speak to Peter then.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay. The couple different things with the Rogers, and I do wonder about that sometimes with the empathic listening, that it can be sort of a cerebral, a word-based, and have sort of maybe there's a feeling there's a feeling of monotone to it that I sometimes wonder about, that, the feeling, it's not a richness of different energies, there's sort of a spacious monotone to the quality of empathic listening that I kind of wonder about, because I kind of have a yearning for a little bit more, sparkly energy kind of a quality to it.
So could I reflect back?
Yeah, please.
So when you consider that empathetic communication, that empathic, cerebral kind of thinking, it doesn't quite match your sense of satisfaction for energy or liveliness, and there's this kind of flatness almost that exists within it, and the flatness is you're just dismayed by that. It seems
it's not quite dismayed by it. It's I'm aware of it. It's sort of a spaciousness. It's a context, and I see that there's some kind of a value within it. It does create an environment where some real intimacy can sort of kind of come up, and so it's kind of one of those things. I notice it, I wonder about it, and I'm just not quite sure what it all means. But it seems to somehow is sort of what kind of building off of what Bill is talking about, that detachment. Even though I don't think real empathy is detached, it's kind of being present. So, but Yeah.
I'm curious. So is it that when you, what I'm hearing you say is that in your mission to create this culture of empathy, you're really thinking deeply about the culture of empathy that exists already, in a sense, that and that flatness that you see in it, or that flatness that exists in it, and you're not seeing that as what you're creating. It's almost like,
no, it's like I'm not even sure. It's just I'm aware of it, and I don't know what to really make of it. I notice it that it's kind of a thing. I'm kind of at the edge of my awareness around it. It's sometimes that flatness feels kind of like painful. It feels like but sometimes I'm thinking that the pain and the flatness of it is because the fun of judgment is removed. Is being judgmental, punching people. It's exciting. It's fun. It's energizing. It's like, hey, it's like you feel like something is happening, and you kind of train yourself to do it. And when you kind of move away from that, everything feels kind of flat and almost painful, because it's maybe the judgment is a way of inhibiting your own pain, and then you got to sit with your own pain when you don't have the judgment, So
it's like you want a heartbeat every once in a while. You really want to create that feeling of safety and comfort and that empathy. But at the same time, you want a little jolt, because it's just so connecting, and it's part of that humanity that you so much value.
Well, it's like I just wonder, it seems like the empathy is a way for it's like a doorway to a deeper connection, but it's a path to get to that deeper connection, and it doesn't have those immediate jolts to it, like judgment and criticizing people and demeaning them and the excitement of that. We're at these fights and people are just beating each other up, the street fights in Berkeley. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of,
Is it that you get almost like, since it's like one side versus the other, that one side that's together, it feels like they have a lot of connection in some way. And it's like a jolt. It's like, boom, like, wow, we're team A, and fuck team B. We're going to kick their ass.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement and a lot of thrill, and there's a lot of emotional stimulation. We're kind of like wired for emotional stimulation. So when you move from that towards empathy, it seems like you're kind of like, that's kind of being sort of suppressed, and you're going in a different direction, and it's a path to deeper connection. But there's sort of a space of pain to get there, or you gotta maybe that would be talking about our pain would be a way of dealing with it. It would be more real somehow, and maybe that would be more life-serving or something. So it's a lot of this stuff. I'm just kind of like making it up as I go along. I feel like.
But you're really just reflecting on how you're philosophizing about the nature of empathy, and the nature of the world you see now, and the benefits and negatives, and the benefits and negatives of the world that you're trying to create. And,
and the felt experience of it too, because it has the felt. I'm addressing the felt experience of it.
Yeah, just in your body of what you're imagining. The two worlds look differently.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is a path that we're on, and like, looking at what that path, the experience of that path, and so the landscape, right? There's the landscape. We're going through an emotional landscape on this path, and what does that landscape look and feel like? So,
just sitting back and looking at the landscape of the work you're doing, and seeing all the different paths, almost like from up in a plane. And just saying, oh, there's that one, and there's that one, and there's the one I'm on. And I wonder where that's taking me.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, so I feel heard. That's.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, how much time do we have? All right.
We got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Just realizing it's my turn again. Almost I think I'm kind of spent actually. I've philosophized quite a bit. So, Celia, could you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you just reflect back what you heard so that I can get some energy going?
Okay. I can. Oh, like what you just said, like
Literally just what I said. I'm trying to pull it out.
It's again your turn, and you wonder if you still have more in you than what you already said. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Thank you for hearing that. Actually, I'm noticing, in saying that I was going to get a joke from that, I did. and to be honest, I'm thinking again, why is it that, like, what Edwin's describing kind of reflects, I think, what I have lived through and what a lot of people in my generation have lived through. We're simultaneously a generation of people who love reality TV, love people yelling, screaming, jumping up and down. And at the same time, we're also a generation of people that want to get things done and really want to, see connection and compassion and everything. And it does seem like those divides are getting bigger and bigger, between different sects and different groups. And just thinking of how do you honor both of those energies at the same time, right, and do it lovingly so that, everyone matters. It's funny because I keep thinking of, what's the most there's like a lot of times there's an online joke. Someone says, post the most controversial thing you can think of. And I say, everyone matters. And at first people go, oh, that's silly. And then as they start thinking about it, they get angrier and angrier and angrier, and just, and it always works every time.
Wow. So, yeah. So you wonder, like, in all this controversy that we are living in, and we're living in this time that we still love all the yelling and the screaming in the sitcoms and whatever. On the other hand, we want to really dive into what is empathy and listening to people. But where is the good feel of a good joke, or can we still have that, or how would that fit in this whole transition, and how are we addicted to having this that's my interpretation, the adrenaline. I don't know if you mean that too, or how can we let go of that?
I feel heard, and sorry guys, I just got an emergency call from the hospital I work at. I got to follow up with it.
Okay.
I'll see you guys next week.
See you guys next time.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah. Let me see. Edwin, I speak to you. Okay. I just a few minutes to my specialty is also to find out how those energies work together. Like, I work with the 5 energies, so water, fire, earth, air, and space. And I help my people feeling those different energies. And even with one sentence, like, it's a beautiful day today, I give that as an example. And I can say, it's a beautiful day today. I can say it with all my fire. I can say it with it's a beautiful day today, So I go through all these emotional energies to feel how it works in your body. And then when you reflect someone, and someone is in really, like someone says, I hate to go there, if you reflect, you really hate to go there. That is so flat, but you have to pick up what their energy was. You have to reflect that energy as well. You really hate to go there. So that is necessary in order to not flatten it out. And that was something that when I came first here in the reflective listening, I thought, oh, it's so flat. So, yeah, that was it.
Okay, so you're talking about the energies. And in terms of when you do the reflective listening, that you're wanting to reflect energetically the energy that you're receiving. And so that's one of the things you actually teach is how to reflect that energy.
On the level, on the level that was given, can you reflect that level? Yeah.
So it's kind of the level and the intensity, etc., that you want to reflect. And you're using like the metaphors of fire, water, air, as having different energies is kind of one way you use that to talk about energies.
Yeah.
And that when you first came to doing the listening here, you thought, oh, these guys are really flat.
Right. Yeah.
Where's all the energy here?
I know.
Where'd all the energy go? Somebody stole the energy.
Yes. Maybe behind the computer.
Bill took it.
Oh, definitely. With the stress balls. And I think what Peter said, we are so hooked, we are so addicted to that adrenaline. And how can we use that adrenaline? How can we use the emotions to even be stronger empathically? Yeah.
So you're just kind of holding the question of how do we use that adrenaline, that energy to be empathic and
And then a last topic would be humor. You know, when is it sarcasm? When is it humor? Like my kid dropped the things from his bread just like that. I said, "Oh, that must be for the chickens." You know, so I mean, 3-story high you live, you know, no chicken in the far around area. So how do you reflect things that happen, and how do you use humor, and how do you stay back from it when it is not appropriate?
So you're looking again at the energies, and humor has energy, and how do you use humor to respond to something that's happened, because it creates it has an energy to it. And
thank you. I feel
okay. Then we could do maybe one more. I guess we could end there then. Do you have anything, Bill? Do you want to?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Then we didn't do a try it exercise. The exercise that he had was to share a story. He had some questions, and then he was just basically introducing empathic listening, which we've been doing from the very beginning, in a pair. And I think he just added, you do a couple reflections and a question, an open question, and then some more listening, and try to listen, beyond what the person was saying a little bit. Is that kind of your take too on what?
Trusting and relying on reflections. It's like a bit like practicing scales when learning musical. So it's about to trust your intuitions and things like that. Insights.
For the activity to.
Yes.
Yeah, he mentions open questions, but I would only use an open question as first response, not in the conversation or later on. Then there are blocks, I think.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
So you're saying use all reflection, no questions,
And also very much be aware of the roadblocks, even though he said somewhere, where was it? I think you are really, or something. Can't see it.
So be aware of roadblocks when I think he was just people who haven't done empathic listening before, to be aware of the roadblocks while you're doing this.
Like the listener said at a certain point, like you look really tired or something, he said. you know, that is, you mentioned the state that is not listening, that, you know, that is an interpretation of you. You look tired. Unless, yeah, so why would you speak about what a person looks? Unless you say, wow, you really are tired of it or something, you know. So you can still use the word tired, but if you say you look tired, then it is my interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, why does he say that?
Oh, yeah. So you've got a lot of questions about his approach and style, and yeah. So I do too. So it's, yeah. Okay, then. Was there something else, or?
Do we still have time? It's already time, I think. Well, then he talks about the nonverbal. I think the nonverbal language gives you clues about the images that a person has. Like you did that, and it gives me clues about, do you see those balls in front of you or not? And I have to check that with you, and it was not really correct that it was something else you meant. So, and then you can describe that image stronger. So the nonverbal cues with our hands, with our faces, can be translated in images, in parallel images, or give the listener clues, and that is really yummy to train that.
Yeah, so he's starting to get into more of these nuances, and it's really getting kind of opening the door to get deeper into this.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Okay, well, to keep us on track, one is we had the closing mirroring feeling. Like, what is the feeling and the motion? Do you have one, Celia?
I feel really full, like we really got to some meat. Yeah, we got to the meat.
We got to the meat. Perfect. Bill, you got something?
Sure. I feel hopeful.
Oh.
Yeah.
How do I feel? It's like, that's interesting. There's a sound too. Yeah. Alrighty, thank you. Got that. We have our intention. It takes about 2 hours for the oil to run out on this thing. So we're almost out. So we had set our intention, or we want to send that intention with us.
We do.
And we do. Okay, great.
It works.
It works.
Okay.